For many people, their discomforts with race can be calmed if you talk about race right at the beginning of meeting. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones, and I have been a therapist for many years. And one of the things, excuse me, one of the things that I've noticed is that if you take the time and talk about race right at the beginning of a conversation, sometimes people's discomfort with race can be, they can sort of calm down, right? And while for many of you, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of responses. That's not my problem. Blah 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 blah. For a counselor such as myself, a lot of times, especially when you're doing your training and rotations and stuff, and I've had many years of internships and training and things like that, you don't get the option to necessarily choose. However, for me, I've always wanted my people that I work with to feel comfortable in therapy and feel like they're getting a fair shot. And I do think that race plays a huge part of that. Um, and, because I myself, I think about myself when I go to my doctors and my physicians, I will feel more comfortable, for example, with a woman. And some people feel more comfortable if they see someone black because they feel like someone understands their cultural nuances. Some people don't want someone black. But, I learned over the years if I have a conversation, and I plainly say, you know, are you okay with having a black therapist? And, the client would be white, Hispanic, even, black, all that kind of stuff, and they'll either say yes or no. And I was like, well, we can certainly refer you to see someone else. And I did this a lot, especially in corrections. And corrections, when I worked in corrections, you work a lot with gang members, and a large part of it is working with, groups such as Aryan Brotherhood and things like that. And so I would always make sure I just, discuss it with them because I don't have any control over who gets assigned to me. A supervisor would do all that. And, but I always try to talk with them and I say, if you don't want to work with me, I can always try to get you transferred to someone else. It doesn't necessarily always work, but, I can definitely talk with my supervisor about it. And, they calm down, and I got to tell you, some of my, best work was with, clients from the Aryan Brotherhood and so on and so forth. And when I started working in prison, most of the guys I worked with were black, and even some of them had a lot of challenges with me, just being a black woman, and they want to definitely try to see if they can manipulate and become powerful over me and that kind of stuff, and sort of make an example of me in front of their peers, so to speak. And then when I left prison, most of the guys that I worked with, just because of how the demographics shifted in prison, were mostly Hispanic. And those guys were, they were like, well, you need to learn how to speak Spanish and blah, 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 blah. And so I think that, like, even in my private practice, I definitely still have those discussions right up front, because sometimes people just, sit around and call counselors, and, they just want someone, that can do X, Y, and Z, right? And so, but a lot of times I would have even white clients reach out and say, hey, can you work with me? I'm white. And I'm like, I work with people. So I work with people issues. And so, I think that's what makes a great counselor, is that you can work with people, regardless of culture. You could also, and I think this is important because a lot of times I do have to end up explaining cultural nuances. And, for example, someone would say to me like, oh, I'm probably doing this because I'm white, or this is common because it's in black culture and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're not necessarily doing something because you're white or black or Hispanic or whatever. You're doing something because it's unhealthy. And I think unhealthy is unhealthy is unhealthy. And I think that transcends culture. I mean, even if you're across the globe and you're listening to me, and just because misogyny may be like, normalized in your culture, for example, it doesn't mean that it's healthy, and it doesn't mean that it's because you're Southeast Asian or Asian or whatever. It just means that that's unhealthy cultural norms that we've become accustomed to as people. And I think but working with cultural norms, being able to explain that, but also just helping people be comfortable. Like I'm not gonna be radical and make you feel bad because you're one culture and I'm this culture. And I'm not going to necessarily make you feel bad about you being an Aryan Brotherhood, but I am going to ask you what that's about and what's going on, and how you think that helps you. And I'm going to look at you as an entire person, and then maybe we can get some good work done together in our time together. Hope that helps. Bye.